Humans have been drinking for so long that alcohol appears everywhere. Bars, taverns, banquets, breweries, and even prehistoric caves. We do not know who took the first sip, but it probably began with a suspicious bowl, a brave volunteer, and an immediate loss of dignity. That first taste may have caused surprise, confidence, dancing, and at least one terrible decision involving a table. So how did fermented fruit become civilization, ceremony, trade, taxation, and a permanent shelf in the supermarket? Today, alcohol appears at weddings, expensive restaurants, cheap restaurants, and in cabinets supposedly reserved for guests. But the story did not begin with bottles, labels, or bartenders. It began with sugar, yeast, and time. Before humans invented alcohol, nature had already been making it for millions of years in fallen, overripe fruit. When fruit splits open, wild yeast reaches the sugary juice and begins converting sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The formula is simple. Sugar, yeast, and time become alcohol and gas, without any human recipe at all. Fruit, honey, and wild grain could all provide sugar, and animals probably encountered weak natural fermentation long before us. Our ancestors may have noticed the smell, tasted the fruit, and discovered that a tiny amount could change how they felt. The effect was usually weak, but apparently strong enough to create confidence far beyond the available evidence. Nature invented alcohol first. Humans simply noticed it, remembered it, and eventually learned how to make more. Hunter-gatherers collected berries, honey, and grain, then carried them home in skins, baskets, shells, wood, or stone containers. Sometimes sweet liquid remained inside a container for several days, exposed to yeast already present in the environment. Then the liquid changed. It bubbled, smelled strange, and made everyone except one curious person step backward. Someone tasted it. First came suspicion, then surprise, then the sudden belief that dancing was now an excellent idea. An accident became a repeatable recipe, and a recipe eventually became a tradition shared around the fire. The next major clue takes us to Mount Carmel in present-day Israel, and a site known as Raqefet Cave. Around 11,000 BC, Natufian hunter-gatherers used this cave for gatherings, burials, and possibly early beer production. They collected wild grain by hand, which meant a great deal of work for a basket that still looked disappointingly empty. The grain was crushed in stone mortars cut into the bedrock, using heavy tools and a large amount of patience. Then the mixture could be heated, left to ferment, and watched for days while absolutely nothing interesting appeared to happen. Collect, crush, heat, wait. Early brewing was less like opening a bottle and more like accepting a temporary career. The result was probably thick, cloudy, and porridge-like, followed by the proud presentation of one very small cup. 3 days of work for one small drink sounds inefficient, but the point may not have been ordinary daily refreshment. At Raqefet Cave, researchers found evidence suggesting fermented grain drinks were connected to ritual feasts and burials. The drink could be passed around during ceremonies, turning brewing into part of memory, mourning, and community. Plant residues in the stone mortars include wheat and barley, though scholars still debate exactly how the evidence should be interpreted. Even so, Raqefet raises a fascinating possibility. People may have brewed beer before full-scale agriculture became established. From the eastern Mediterranean, our story moves east to Jiahu, a Neolithic settlement in Henan Province, China. Between roughly 7,000 and 6,600 BC, Jiahu villagers produced one of the earliest known fermented beverages. Their recipe combined rice, honey, and fruit, including hawthorn or grapes, inside large pottery vessels. In other words, someone looked at every available source of sugar and said, yes, put everything in the jar. Chemical residues absorbed into pottery walls preserved evidence of the drink for thousands of years. Jiahu was also home to rice cultivation, domestic pigs, pottery, ornaments, burials, and remarkable crane bone flutes. So the same community had farming, music, ceremony, animals, and fermented drinks. The original festival package was nearly complete. People shaped pottery, played music, gathered around jars, and almost certainly discovered that large celebrations create practical problems. The Jiahu drink was not simply a random accident. It was prepared, stored, shared, and probably connected to social or ritual life. About 9,000 years ago, alcohol was already tied to technology, agriculture, music, ceremony, and community identity. This leads to an old debate. Did early farmers grow grain mainly for bread, or partly because they wanted beer? The honest answer is probably both. Grain could provide food, drink, storage, status, and a reason to organize communal labor. Cultivated fields and granaries created surplus, and surplus made larger feasts and larger brewing projects possible. Of course, nobody invented farming because Friday was approaching, but alcohol may still have encouraged cooperation and celebration. Preparing a feast required grain, jars, fuel, time, planning, and many people working together. That made fermented drinks more than food. They became a kind of social technology for bringing groups together. Bread fed the village, beer animated the feast, and both came from the same valuable crop. Next, we travel to the South Caucasus, between the Black and Caspian Seas, in present-day Georgia. At sites including Gadakrili Gora and Shulaveris Gora, pottery preserves evidence of grape wine from around 6000 BC. Wild Eurasian grapes were abundant in the region, and grape juice contains exactly what yeast needs, plenty of sugar. The process was elegant. Crush grapes, collect the juice, place it in pottery, and wait. Then continue waiting. Early winemaking required confidence that the jar was doing something useful while appearing completely inactive. Large pottery vessels could hold and store the fermenting wine, sometimes partly buried in the ground. The result was probably sour, unpredictable, and proudly served to guests as a sign of sophistication. Over time, people cultivated vines more deliberately, improved storage, exchanged wine, and built celebrations around it. From there, wine entered expanding networks of villages, trade, status, and eventually cities. In Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates, alcohol became part of one of the world's earliest urban systems. By the 4th and 3rd millennia BC, cities managed grain, labor, temples, canals, storage, and beer on a large scale. Workers could receive grain and beer as rations, carefully measured by administrators who recorded everything. Mesopotamian beer was often thick and full of solids, so people drank it through long straws from communal vessels. Occasionally, the straw was probably longer than necessary, but the principle was practical. Filter the drink while sharing it. Then came accounting. Once beer became wages and temple property, it also created paperwork in the form of clay tablets. The Sumerians even associated beer with the goddess Ninkasi, and a hymn in her honor preserves details of brewing. Breweries used grain, dates, vessels, labor, and specialized knowledge to produce beer for workers, temples, and feasts. Beer could be payment, offering, daily ration, and social drink, all at the same time. As cities grew, storerooms filled with jars, tablets multiplied, and alcohol became part of administration itself. In ancient Egypt, the same relationship between grain, labor, ritual, and beer became even more industrial. At Abydos, archaeologists uncovered a large brewery dating to around 3000 BC. Rows of ceramic vats could produce thousands of liters in a single batch, far beyond household brewing. Workers carried grain, managed heat, prepared mixtures, and distributed beer throughout a highly organized system. Beer served ordinary workers in religious offerings, while elite wine occupied a different place in the social hierarchy. Same party, very different menu. Alcohol already reflected wealth, occupation, and status. Egypt also cultivated vineyards, transported jars along the Nile, and counted production on a scale that would exhaust any ancient accountant. By this point, alcohol was no longer a lucky accident, it was an industry. In ancient Greece, wine became central to the symposium, where guests reclined, talked, listened to music, and performed intelligence loudly. Wine was normally mixed with water in a large crater. Drinking it unmixed was considered uncivilized. Naturally, this created the perfect opportunity for someone to pour pure wine secretly and horrify every philosopher in the room. Dionysus represented wine, theater, ecstasy, and celebration. Philosophy, but louder. Symposia combined poetry, music, games, politics, status, and increasingly dramatic speeches. Rome inherited and expanded Mediterranean wine culture across an enormous empire. Roman ports and ships moved amphorae in vast quantities, connecting vineyards, merchants, cities, soldiers, and consumers. Different wines carried different prices and reputations, from elite vintages to cheaper drinks for ordinary people. If a wine tasted strange, an ambitious merchant could always describe it as complex. Roads, ships, vineyards, and trade routes turned wine into a commercial product recognized across the Mediterranean. Labels, seals, containers, and expert opinions helped transform taste into status. A common modern myth claims medieval people drank beer because all water was deadly. But medieval communities used wells, springs, rainwater, rivers, and sometimes boiled water. They drank water and weak beer. Everyday beer could provide calories and variety, but it was not evidence that nobody knew what water was. Otherwise, every medieval cathedral would have been designed by builders who could not walk in a straight line. The next major transformation was distillation, developed and refined across medieval, scientific, and craft traditions. A still heats liquid, carries vapor through a tube, cools it, and collects a more concentrated product. At some point, someone studying the result asked the question that follows nearly every human invention: can we drink it? Distillation created smaller bottles with much stronger contents, which meant easier transport and potentially bigger problems. By the early modern period, wine, rum, and brandy traveled through ports, armies, navies, governments, and global trade routes. Alcohol became deeply entangled with taxation, colonial power, plantation economies, and unequal systems of exchange. Barrels became revenue. Governments counted coins, merchants counted cargo, and empires counted everything they could tax. Alcohol had become money, policy, military supply, and a tool of global commerce. Today it remains part of weddings, parties, restaurants, supermarkets, relaxation, and sometimes private attempts to escape. Its effects can impair judgment, coordination, memory, and reaction time, even before a person feels seriously intoxicated. Alcohol contributes to more than 200 diseases, injuries, and health conditions, including problems affecting the liver, heart, cancer risk, injury, and mental health. From stone bowls to pottery jars, vats, amphorae, barrels, and bottles, the containers changed while the basic chemistry stayed familiar. Across every era, the same human motives kept returning: curiosity, ceremony, pleasure, status, cooperation, trade, and escape. We did not just discover alcohol, we built technologies, economies, rituals, and cultures around it. And that may be the strangest part of the story. A natural accident became one of civilization's most persistent companions.